Okay, very sorry. Theoretically, hopefully you are now all seeing me again. Let me work on getting Shannon back in here. We did drop a lot of you, which is a huge bummer, but we are getting the stream back up and going. Just had a random power outage here. Unfortunately, these kinds of things do happen. But yeah, random power outage. Let me send a new call to Shannon here, and we will get everything back up and running. Really sorry. That's very frustrating. So they're doing power work, or not power specifically, but they're doing construction above me. And this happened once earlier today. I thought things were safe because it hadn't happened since then. But unfortunately, it did happen again. So we're just waiting to get Shannon back here, and we will keep going. Big sorry. Like I said, unfortunately, we lost a number of you here, but hopefully we'll be able to bring some people back in. Yeah, that's never fun when tech stuff happens. Okay, Shannon is back. I'm going to put you on, even though your green screen is showing at the moment. I'll fix that after as we get going here. But yeah, unfortunately, power outage. I thought I was safe, was not safe. That's, going to be really good for the podcast end of things too. I'll just have to go in and edit it out basically. But yeah, the moment it cut out should be the moment that the stream was lost. So if you want to finish up your synopsis, because I still need to add your link also to the description.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly where I left off. I'll try to be very concise. So essentially my video had to do with the concept of forgiveness as a mandate. In a lot of Judeo-Christian therapeutic and counseling structures, forgiveness after traumatic events is introduced as a mandate. You have to forgive the person. You in order for you to be able to progress, in order for you to be able to let go of any sort of animosity and move on, you're introduced to the concept of forgiveness as a mandate. And that can be incredibly detrimental, because if forgiveness is a mandate and you're not in a space where you feel as though, let's say, for example, your perpetrator has received justice, like perhaps they walked away with no consequences, it would be very difficult for you to be the person who's responsible for absolving them. And that's what it can seem like. It can seem as though you are invalidating what happened to you and now have become responsible for absolving the person who put you in that situation to begin with. And if somebody is not ready for that, and it is pressed upon them, it can be incredibly detrimental, and it essentially push them further down into a hole of self-assessment and despair that they're already attempting to claw their way out of. So that is the brief synopsis of my video, but it goes a little bit more in depth, and I'm sure as we go over some of everybody's stories that they were kind enough to share, and I appreciate you all sharing them. I know it couldn't have been easy, so thank you very much for being willing to be open with us, in the hopes that others may be able to learn and benefit from your experiences. We'll go a little further in depth.
Right. Yeah, it definitely was a big deal. I almost felt bad putting the prompt out saying, and I started with, if you're comfortable doing this. And obviously that was because this is a big deal. And I'll tell you, like, for myself, growing up Mormon, forgiveness was a central theme of that as well. And there was so often the case of many of these stories, in fact, come from ex-Mormons who, especially women that were assaulted by another church member and basically told, like, if you don't forgive them, now you're sinning as bad as they are, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like, not just that this is what you need to heal, but actually, like, the act of not forgiving them is gonna affect your salvation too. It's good that you're in the wrong for it.
And adding an incremental pressure to somebody who's already in that emotional state through no fault of their own is a tragedy. You should not be responsible for the absolution of your transgressor. It's their job to deserve absolution. It is not your job to grant it to them.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting concept too that I almost wonder about talking about. Let's not go too in depth because I want to get to these stories, but there's been this interesting thing where I think about, I've talked a ton on this channel about what just a sack of shit I used to be, and when I was younger, I was in what ended up being a mutually abusive relationship, not physical, but all the other fun kinds. A mutually abusive relationship. However, because I was also like a couple years older than her, we were both kind of like figuring out things about our life. I think I led a lot of it and take most of the responsibility for how toxic and terrible that relationship was. And now here in my later years, I know like an important part of her recovery has been that, and it kind of taught me myself, I didn't want it this way at the time, but that when you have a breakup like that, especially one that's a rough breakup, the best thing for me anyway is to isolate totally from the other person. Just no contact for at least some level of time. And I know that was really important for her and her recovery. And it's kind of one of these things where it's like years later, now that I'm not such like a sack of shit, I'd kind of love the opportunity to show her that. But because, like, for me, I feel like that's not my place. Like, she needs the isolation from me to, if ever she came and was like, hey, I wanted to discuss and do an autopsy on our shit relationship from the past, I'd be happy to. But I think there's also a level of like, there are people who, when they do feel bad about something, because of this forgiveness thing, they feel a level of entitlement to some kind of like follow-up conversation, some kind of like, well, things did go bad, now I've seen the light, now you owe me the chance to try and make those things right. And even that, like in my own life, I had to recognize I was feeling that way and that was wrong. And I think even that is wrong. The feeling entitled to be forgiven when you did something. It's good for you to be a better person, but nobody owes you shit, especially if you fucked them over.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I don't think anybody owes you anything. People don't have to forgive you for the things that they did. Recovery from traumatic experiences is an incredibly individualized process. So what recovery from trauma would look like for me and what recovery from trauma would look like for you, for us to get to the other end and be where we want to be, could be incredibly different journeys. For me, forgiveness could be a crucial component. It could be something that, because of my cognitive state, the mental space that I'm in, and how I socialize or engage, is something that I personally need in order to move forward. And if that's the case, then that's fantastic, and you should be able to go through that guided process and do so in a healthy fashion. Right. But if that's what you want, if it's directed by you. But when you enter into a therapeutic process and you're not in a healthy emotional place about what has happened to you, and you haven't gone through all of the steps that you need in order to fully cope with, understand with, incorporate, and move forward with the incorporation of what's happened to you as part of your new self, somebody consistently pressing you that you need to forgive in order to move forward is placing an additional external pressure that's not helping you in the process. It's actually hindering you. So if somebody came, if you were in an incredibly poor emotional space and were able to move on, but you had a trigger, and that trigger was seeing or interacting with that transgressor, and you were able to be okay solely because you know that you're away from that person and they're a trigger for fear, and then that person is reintroduced to you, that could be a massive backslide that is just about to take place. That's thrust upon you, and especially if it's thrust upon you by that person showing up and being like, hey, I'm cool now, and I'm gonna make it up to you. They have no reason to trust you. You may be cool now, you may be better, and you may legitimately be wanting to make it up to that person, but they don't know that, and they may never know that, and you have to accept that that's okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Not reason to trust you.
to me, it reminds me of like drug recovery and my own drug recovery from my younger years and wilder college years and such.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to forgive cocaine and now start hanging around cocaine again, because you don't put yourself in those situations that are the same patterns. When I quit drugs, and it was at the time a lot of uppers, I not only stopped the drugs, I stopped the people I was hanging around, and the situations that often led to that. And that's been why I haven't relapsed once. And it's now something like 7 years behind me.
I think you may be overlapping the concepts of forgiveness and reconciliation there a little bit.
Sure, probably.
Because you can forgive a person that you never, ever, ever, ever see again. You can forgive a person who's passed away, for example. So they're not going to be reintroduced to your space,
right,
or incorporated into your life again. But you can forgive them as an exercise for yourself. And that's perfectly fine and incredibly valid and a wonderful thing if you can do it. Like my overall point is that when it's proposed as a mandate,
right,
that is a bad idea.
Which for me, it was actually that. So in thinking of actual specific, not related to the drugs now, and thinking of specific things that I went through when I was in my youths with family members. So my family, they still brag about, and the kids are expected to recite it at a drop of a hat, that the number one family rule in our household is loyalty. And that came with when we were slighted or abused or whatever else by our siblings. And in my case, some of the things were rather severe, that we were expected to get over that. So forgiveness and reconciliation went hand in hand in the application from like my family standpoint, because now this person who does not deserve to be around me anymore, not only am I expected to be around them, I'm expected to be kind and familial with them. I'm expected to embrace them and spend time and that sort of thing. And so that's where I think I was crossing the forgiveness and reconciliation lines together, because that was in effect because of this family loyalty. My family is ran like the mob. Like loyalty first. I've literally heard the lectures of "we don't call the cops on family." Like it's literally the mob, and so that's where I think I was crossing those things together.
Yeah, it's group protection at the detriment and expense of any individual amongst that group.
Yeah,
I'm really
exactly.
sorry you have to go through that, Jimmy. It breaks my heart.
Anymore, it's literally just like, no, I'm not going to. There's nothing left that the members of my family that I do get along with, I get along with. And there's like one member of my family who keeps trying to force this other person back into my life, who I have cut out of my life and explicitly said, when I'm around, don't invite them over. When I'm trying to find a solution to something, don't bring them into the mix. And they keep trying to force them in. But now at this point, like, there's a time in my life where certain members of my family would have used like, well, you need X from us, so you're going to be in this family on our terms. I don't need anything from my family anymore. If they were to cut me off tomorrow, my lifestyle wouldn't change at all. So now the nice part is that I'm in a situation where I get to control who's in my life and who isn't, but I wasn't always. And I guess part of the reason we're doing this episode is because a lot of people aren't in that situation.
Right.
So let's get started in reading these. This is where things will get a little more intense. So once again, a content warning, very sensitive stuff here. There will be themes of assault. To quick answer the question somebody asked earlier when I said it wasn't physically abusive, but it was all the other kind. Somebody asked in response if I'm saying it was sexually abusive. No, that relationship wasn't. In my mind, sexually abusive would have been a subset of physical abuse. The nice thing for me is that no matter how toxic and a piece of shit person I was, my kink, if you will, has always been intimacy, and it's really, really hard to have intimacy without enthusiastic consent. So that's like the one thing I was spared on, is never being particularly interested in having sex with somebody who wasn't way into it with me too. Got lucky there because I definitely was levels of toxic and learned to be a manipulative asshole to get the things I wanted from the kind of upbringing and life I had. All right, we will start here with this first story. A religious friend told me that my health problems were due to the fact that I had not yet forgiven the man that molested me as a child. She said that in order to be healthy, I had to see the situation from his point of view. Then apparently my autoimmune disease would be cured.
No.
This is just getting started. This is, yeah.
That is so much to unpack already. Like, just, that is levels of wrong, just intense levels of wrong. For starters, okay. Oh, I don't even know where to start. There's so many things. I'm going to end up crying on this stream. So I have autoimmune disorders too. I have multiple sclerosis, transverse myelitis, I have psoriasis, I have asthma. I'm a mess. I'm an autoimmune disaster. But things that can exacerbate autoimmune disorder are, stress and anxiety. Those are things that can exacerbate specific types of autoimmune disorders. So here's the thing with a lot of what these people say. There's always that little grain of common sense, surface value truth that the narrative is built around. Now, being able to mitigate your stress and anxiety could potentially be beneficial for relieving some of or alleviating some of the symptoms of an autoimmune disease. Just because being in a healthy emotional state puts less stress on your body, and your autoimmune system will be a little bit more calm. You'll have better sleep, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, conflating that with saying that in order to be in that position, you have to do X is just patently false. It's patently false. We're asserting, essentially, that if you forgive this person, then you'll alleviate that anxiety, and that will potentially alleviate some of your physiological symptoms. If you were in the right place and that's what you needed to do, then sure. But if you're not in that place, what you need to do is not forgive that person. What you need to do is find ways to mitigate and understand your emotional faculties as they pertain to that situation. That doesn't mandate forgiveness. I'm going to say that over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah. I'm not against the concept of forgiveness. I think it can be definitely beneficial, but it does not mandate forgiveness. Forgiveness is for you when you're ready. It belongs to you. Exactly. And if you're not ready, it will increase your anxiety and actually have a detrimental effect, because you will start to internalize. You will start to say, well, why can't I forgive? What's wrong with me? But was this my fault? Should I be forgiving them? Why do I have stress when I think about forgiving them? Am I a bad person? These are the types of things that will go through your head if you're not ready and you're attempting to force yourself to, which will only increase your anxiety. So I guess the long and short of it is that person is wrong, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, Shannon and I are not advocating that you should never forgive anyone. It's certainly not that kind of like, you don't have to forgive shit, so don't. It's literally the concept. Yeah, it's only this idea that it is mandatory, and it is peddled often as a religious good, that it's going to bring you something. Better, and the problem is that also the other thing that can happen with like with me and the things I had to deal with in my childhood was forgiveness was something that was mandated of me, so it happened, and then I set myself up for cycles of repetition, because you're also often taught in these things like you're being forgiven or you're forgiving them as part of like their growth too, and they're going to get better, and so then these things also turn around where you start to question when bad things keep happening to you in what appears to be a pattern, what's wrong with you? And I think this next story actually kind of gets to that idea a little bit. This one is, after admitting to being molested by a camp counselor and it says I was 11, during confession I was told to repent for any sin I may have done to tempt him, and that I should pray for his recovery instead of my own. This isn't even, so there's this concept that's already bad from religion of original sin, that because of somebody who lived 6,000 years ago, allegedly, 6,000 years ago, that we carry that sin. But now it's another level of sin transference, that when we are slighted, the responsibility for that sin falls on us as well, which is at minimum absurd, but in practicality, rage-inducing.
Put yourself in a position of recovery too. If you're in a position where you've suffered, I'm sorry, I keep fanning myself, the lights are super hot. But if you're in a position where you are attempting to move beyond something that has happened to you, something that's incredibly traumatic, something that you didn't bring upon yourself, somebody transgressed against you, and the messages that you're receiving through the recovery process are that you need to analyze the components of yourself that brought that on. You're essentially putting somebody in a position where they're open up to more victimization. Because if they see it as being their fault, by default, that can at least partially absolve the person that transgressed against them. And if it partially absolves, or fully in their mind absolves, the person that transgresses against them because they take the fault onto themselves, they're ripe for the picking at that point. They can't move past it because it's become internalized fault. They're not able to work on the feelings, emotions, physiological symptoms that trauma has caused them,
right.
But rather they feel as though it's something that they brought upon themselves. So they start to work on how they behave to please other people or to avoid that situation, as opposed to moving on with their life. It's enabling abusers to find more people to abuse and be able to walk away from it.
So I don't even want to read the next one to you. You're going to be so mad.
I'm already not okay.
Did you screen any of these before we watched?
I did not. I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I was at work all day and I was with my little guy. I didn't have a chance.
You should have meditated or something before. I had to get in the headspace for this. I was assaulted when I was 14, and my pastor made me apologize to my dad because I let my purity be taken from me. Now this isn't quite this is again,
I'm so sorry.
Projecting onto the victim that now they've done something wrong, and not only did they, it sound like, do something wrong to the abuser, but they've done something to their father for which they need to apologize. Now this goes to a concept we're talking about on this channel all the time, this sort of masculine ownership of all women, that if you are female, that your purity, quote unquote, you are the literal property of your father until he transfers that to your husband.
It on-persons that person. It literally makes them not even a component in the abuse.
Right.
I'm so sorry to everybody who shared these. I'm very, very sorry. But, oh my God. If you tell somebody who's been sexually assaulted that even if they're recognizing that the assault is valid, they don't see it as a valid transgression against the person who was assaulted. They see it as a transgression against the person who essentially owns them.
Right.
The transgression, it takes them out of the equation. not only invalidates the abuse, because now the abuse from the perspective of the person that's been abused isn't about them. It's about what the transgressor did to the person who is responsible and or owns them as a human. It takes them out of the equation. The damage of that, I couldn't even begin to assess it in this situation, because it would be compounded upon compounded upon compound to apologize to somebody else. Wow.
Right.
Wow,
for letting your purity be taken too, which this reminds me as well of what my own sisters were taught growing up, what and what lots of people in the Mormon church are taught, which is that if somebody tries to assault you, you should kick and scream to the point of even if your life is in danger, because it would be better for them to murder you than for you to have your purity taken. And that was an actual thing taught in church, that you would be better dead than...
Be better dead?
Now, yeah, that you should do everything up to being murdered, including being murdered, because that's better than having your purity taken. Which, by the way, I 100% accept that there are many people who, from their perception, from the past or the future, that would rather be dead than assaulted in that way. But that's not for any clergyman to decide. And the concept of that your purity is so, your quote-unquote virtue, your quote-unquote purity is so holy that you should risk your life to keep it intact. The concept that purity even exists in the first fucking place is stupid. And I've seen a lot of people use my my substitute swear word in the live chat. Today I'm not using any substitutes. You're gonna hear fucks and shits and fuck you, and this is this one is too much. Yeah, it's funny. Go ahead.
Sorry. Before we move on to the next one, but to follow that logic down the line, like I like to think about extrapolating things out. Like each moment in our life that something like this happens to us, we extrapolate it out and we see what it's going to mean down the line. So if you receive that message, right, that you better kick and scream and get yourself killed because that would be better. And then you're in that situation and you do what you need to do to survive that moment, and you get out of it as a survivor, as somebody who survived that moment, as somebody who did what they needed to do to survive that moment in time. And now you're met with your indoctrination, feeding your thoughts, informing your cognition regarding how to interpret what just happened to you. If you're interpreting what just happened to you through the lens of, I should have gotten myself killed, that would be better than where I am now. Let that resonate for a second. Right. You're doing that to victims. You're doing that to victims. You are telling victims who do what they need to do to survive in that situation that they didn't deserve to survive, that they would have been better off dead after they've survived.
Right. You also
help them keep surviving, you miserable assholes. What the hell is wrong with you? We're valuable humans.
There's another side to it too that I don't think, maybe it's an unintentional consequence, but then you also have people like me who during my teenage years, because I became sexually active young, those are the years that I remember exactly what depression feels like. I deal with anxiety more as an adult than depression, and being downright suicidal because of these shame cycles. And this isn't peculiar to me. When you teach people that your virtue is worth more than your life, when you elect, in my case, to abandon my virtue, to give away my virginity, to start being impure, and the guilt cycles start up, you literally think you've now given up something that you were told is worth more than your life, and it makes you want to kill yourself. It makes you suicidal. And so the interesting thing is, growing up as a male in the Mormon church, the purity stuff and the virtue stuff, and they use the word chastity, it's definitely pressed upon you, but it's not pressed upon you near as hard as it is through the Young Women's Organization. We didn't get the chewed gum metaphor that every time you have sex with somebody, it's like another bite into a piece of gum. And so who's going to want you if you're a chewed up piece of gum by the end of it all?
Not how it works.
Those stories were relayed in the Young Women's Organization. And yeah, it's this concept of it's chewed worth gum? More than your life. So even when you've never heard the chewed gum metaphor?
No, but because it makes no sense. If let's say I have sex 1,000 times through my life, whether that is one partner or 1,000 different partners, the result is the same. The metaphor doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Basically, they're saying it's a big spiritual thing that happens too, because you're giving away your purity. And then they would and they'll even end it with but through the Savior, you can be restored to a regular, good, clean piece of gum if you repent. There's also a version of it that's like duct tape. Like if you take a piece of duct tape and you touch a person, then you touch another person, after so many times it can't stick to a person anymore. And it basically is the story behind it. The idea behind it is if you have a lot of premarital sex, you'll not be able to have an actual attachment with somebody. And so it's going to lead to things like
inherently devalues you.
Right, exactly. That's literally it. Remember, the most valuable thing you have, and this is true not just in Mormonism, but lots of other Christian religions, is especially if you are raised as a woman in the church, the most valuable thing you have is your virtue. In fact, Elizabeth Smart, do you remember her story?
Yeah,
having kidnapped, kept as a polygamist wife as a young teenager, raped over and over again. And when she was eventually found and separated from her abuser, she starts going back to the Mormon church, and she actually independently campaigned against the church as a member, asking them to drop the purity stories and the purity conversations because she's already been through one of the most traumatic experiences a human can go through, and she's being re-traumatized by the guilt she's feeling going to young women's classes and hearing about virtue and purity and how through no fault of her own, she lost her purity. It's not a real thing. And she was going through new guilt cycles, new deep slumping depressions because she felt nobody could ever love me now because I don't have my virtue. I wasn't chaste. And even though she made none of those choices. And so she was actually petitioning the church to change those conversations. Now, I don't know if she's still a member of the church. I know she went on a mission at some point. I don't know what's going on, but I remember that being a big thing of this is how toxic and bad the purity culture is, that somebody can be kidnapped and raped for months on end and come out of that and go to church just to relive their trauma and feel guilty about something they had no choice in.
Unreal.
All right.
Getting frustrated.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start getting saucy. I'm gonna lose my composure. I'm trying. I'll try to keep it.
Because of the delay from the pause, we'll go till 10 after reading these stories, and then we'll respond to the super chats and everything. We'll try and make some of these responses now. I want to get through quite a few more, so we'll try and make the responses a little bit shorter so that we have a diversity of experiences in here. I went to live with my nan after I was disowned for being trans. While living with her ex, a Jehovah's Witness, visited and went on a bigoted rant. When I tried to defend myself, he choked me and then stormed out. My nan told me I should forgive him because of his genuine fear for my soul. So here's what I hear. Growing up,
bigotry is justified.
I grew up in the South, or at least I spent a number of years in the South. And I remember hearing stories that were essentially this, but with race, of people who somebody tried to have a black boyfriend, so family members went out because of genuine concern for the safety of their whether it's daughter or sister or whatever, and beat the shit out of someone for the crime of being black, of course, this is that exact same thing to me. It doesn't matter if you are genuinely concerned about somebody, if what you think, the way you exhibit that concern is based in your fucking bigoted piece of shit ways. So you're not okay for attacking a trans person because you're genuinely worried about their soul, in the same way that you wouldn't be, it's not okay for you to attack a black person because you're a fucking idiot and you think that that inherently makes somebody less safe. And so you're doing that out of the protection, out of the genuine fear for the physical safety of somebody. Like, fuck you. You're a bigoted piece of shit. Fuck you. And by the way, fuck you.
That's fair. That's not. I could have done with a few more fuck yous, but I think that's sufficient for now.
I had to get some water.
You made me cough. I just wanted to say that being you isn't a crime. No, you are deserving of nothing but, respect, and to be treated as you would expect other people to treat each other for being you, no matter who you are. Period. Full stop. Being you never, ever is deserving of somebody to have a violent reaction. Ever.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
And the fact that you were told to forgive somebody, and the reason is they were legitimately concerned for your soul. To me, what I hear when somebody says that is they were justified in their bigotry against you. They just maybe took it too far. And that's not the case. That is not the case. They were not justified to begin with. Period. Full stop. I'm very, very sorry. I hope you didn't forgive them. I hope. I hope you did.
The unfortunate reality is.
Good for you. I hope you did, but man, I don't forgive them.
Yeah,
I don't have to.
I don't either. The unfortunate reality is, and maybe this was far enough back that you don't have to worry about this anymore, or maybe your grandmother has grown as a person, as often happens in the final years of life. That's kind of a joke. The unfortunate reality is here that your grandmother sounded sympathetic to your abuser. Like, that's fucked up. So fuck you, not you, the person with the story. Fuck the Jehovah's Witness guy who did that, and fuck your grandma. Sorry.
People that use religion as a justification for hate. Well, my hate's justified.
Yeah.
Because I'm worried about you.
Right.
And worrying about you looks a lot like hate.
Right.
When you're in my religion. So I get to do what I want and treat you how I please, because whatever I believe. That's horse shit.
And tell me about this whole
conceivable.
Tell me about this. I don't hate the sin, or I hate the sin. Then why did you choke the sinner and not the sin? Like, fuck you. Sorry, I had another fuck you in there. Zombie Queen says, my school refused to discuss the fact that one of their students raped me because even if it did happen, we had to forgive. Go Texas public schools.
Wow. Nope, not go Texas public schools. Rape.
Maybe in Austin, not the rest of Texas. Yeah, it's...
I'm sorry. I just keep saying I'm sorry. What's tragic to me is that there are so many stories like this where people have intensely traumatic, awful things done to them, and then immediately the onus of resolution is shifted to the victim in all scenarios. The responsibility for absolution and the responsibility for resolution is immediately thrust upon the person who had no choice in whether or not the circumstance was even going to take place. That is awful and inexcusable, and I wish more people realized what they we're doing. I think so many people just want to go along to get along.
Right.
And somebody who's already in a vulnerable position, telling them, hey, just forget about it. You'll feel better if you forgive this person, and, you don't want to ruin their life, or, they're really not a bad person. They just had a bad moment, or you can't move on until you do. All of these tropes that are introduced to somebody, when what they really need is for you to recognize what happened to them, to acknowledge how traumatic it is, and to help them move forward. Whether that incorporates an aspect of, resolution or forgiveness is ultimately going to be up to the individual who is going through that process. For you to say that it's their job to fix a mess that they didn't make is just reprehensible as far as I'm concerned. But yet that is what consistently happens because of these Judeo-Christian value tropes about forgiveness being a virtue that all of us must do in order to be morally upstanding people. We need to be able to turn the other cheek. No, sorry, absolutely not.
Yeah. Nope. The hard part here too is that we've had this culture in this society that's reinforced these really shit views about sex, ownership of people, and consent hasn't been a serious conversation or a part of sex education for years. And in a lot of society, you are seeing the reaction to that being things like Time's Up, things like Me Too. But the place that Time's Up and Me Too isn't going to are the most significant reinforcers of these ideals. Until Me Too and Time's Up makes it into the churches, I don't see this being a problem that society gets rid of completely, because this is still the place that if you are assaulted, they are going to, not only might they try and intercept it and keep it from the police and keep it from the people, because we keep seeing that kind of thing where a church decides to handle these sins internally and with appeals to God's law instead of man's laws. You're going to, as the victim, be shamed and try to figure out what your part in that is. And so, unfortunately, the one place that is allowed to say we don't much want to do what the rest of society is doing is the church. The church is, and they are hiding behind that license society just gives them as a you can't criticize my faith status, to avoid having the same discussions that the rest of society is having right now. And that is going to reinforce in places like this, in Texas school systems, and places like that where religious people get to have micro theocracies. That's going to keep happening. This is the place. These are the places that need to be having those conversations the most.
And it's permeating too. So it's not even just in churches anymore. It's permeated society to such a degree that the idea of withholding forgiveness is in and of itself seen as a transgression. It informs something to external people about the person. They're seen as spiteful. They're seen as, not wanting to let go or holding on to the past, when that may not even remotely be the case. They may not be spiteful. They may not wish ill on the person. They may want that person to continue on a good life. They may want them to receive the justice that they haven't yet received, but it's up to them. People imposing forgiveness as an imperative, as a moral imperative that informs something about the person, when it should be an individual decision. The person is transgressed against that person. Who are you to tell them how they should feel about that?
Right.
It blows my mind that it's seen as withholding forgiveness in and of itself is seen as a transgression, because it has permeated the culture so much that forgiveness is a virtue. You must do it. You absolutely must. If you don't, it informs something about you. But it doesn't. It doesn't at all. It just says that you are exercising your right to have a judgment about what happened to you and whether or not you feel that person is deserving of absolution in your eyes and your eyes alone, and you don't owe it to anybody.
The growing up in a very fundamentalist religion and growing up around a lot of religious people, you see this even get more bananas. I can recall stories of people who were told to ask forgiveness from the people they held the grudge against. Someone did something bad to somebody and they didn't forgive them, and then were later advised that for not forgiving them, they now need to go seek forgiveness from the person who fucked them over in the first place.
Because for not forgiving.
Yeah, right.
That's how crazy it is. See, it's seen as a transgression.
Right.
Like, it's
right.
In and of itself.
You were
synonymous
slighted.
with holding animosity.
You were slighted, and that turned into your sin. Like, fuck that. This is also why I hate the concept of sin. Let's try and get 2 or 3 more of these in before we start wrapping up here. If we were commenting our stories here, then it's easy. Being black with white parents, I was always told that I should forgive and forget all of the racism inside the church just because they're just people and it's not actually the church, whatever that means. Similarly saw that in the Mormon church. We always heard, in fact, the church is perfect. It's the people who are flawed. So if ever you think anything could be wrong with the culture, with the nature of the people in your congregation, either you are wrong and you need to let it go, or it could be that the people are wrong. But even at that point, you're supposed to be turning the other cheek. That was the kind of shit.
If the church as an institution doesn't inform the behavior of the people, then what the hell is it for?
Right.
Like,
right.
What does it do? If it's not mandating moral imperatives to people and dictating how to behave based on a doctrine.
Right.
Then, and if you're not enforcing the adherence to that behavioral and moral doctrine via, social pressure through the church, then what's it doing? What's it for? Why are you there? What are you doing, guys?
I can almost guarantee you I can almost guarantee you every ex-Mormon you ever meet will have heard in their life, the church is perfect, the people are flawed.
Churches are not perfect.
No, they're not. And this was specifically the Mormon church. Mormons literally believe that the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints is a perfect institution.
What's a church without people? If a church isn't constituted of people, it's not really a church anymore. It's just a series of buildings with a book inside it, and nobody's read that book.
It's funny because they say that if something seems bad, that's clearly the people and not the church. And yet, what is the principle? And by their fruits you shall know ye shall know them. By their fruits I think I fucked that verse up. But essentially, like, what is the fruit of religion if not the culture of the people who participate in it?
Yeah, that's fair.
From ages 5 to 9, my mother physically abused me. One day I had enough and told the priest and asked what I should do. He asked me what I did wrong. I replied, I don't know, as a 9-year-old would. He looked me in the eyes and said, then you should be grateful because your mother is steering you into the right path. I left that day confused and mad at myself for not being a good child.
Oh my God. I have an 8-year-old.
Yeah. It's you wonder too whether or not the priest actually felt that way or if he was just intellectually lazy. Just you know what's really worked for us? Victim blaming. If this kid walks out of here feeling like shit about themselves, I've done my job. They don't know any other way to do it, I imagine, at this point.
And at that point, when you're a child, like, to get to the point that you feel as though you need help, you can't turn to your parents because they're abusing you, and you turn to the only other authority figures that you really trust and are told that are virtuous, and you're told that the church is the most virtuous and is going to protect you the most. and you turn there, at that age you would take it on authority that whatever they say should stand, because you've been indoctrinated to believe that they're the ultimate authority on literally goddamn everything.
The next story literally just expands on that. So the next one is honor thy father and mother. That's it. That's the tweet. For real, though, that whole, yeah, that's a toxic behavior, but it's your mother was prevalent in my life mostly, but not exclusively, coming from a religious place. That similarly happened to me. It was never question the actions or motivations of your parents. And that came both from my parents and was reinforced at church.
Parents aren't infallible simply by virtue of being parents. There's nothing about expelling a child from your body or creating a child in general that automatically informs you how to be a perfect parent. There isn't any such thing as a perfect parent. There are just those of us who are absolutely doing the best that we can with everything that's available to us, with every fiber of our being. But even we are flawed. So to give a child the concept that everything your parents do is infallible, is doing, even parents that are trying their best, is doing an abject disservice to that child and also the parents.
Right.
Like if they're doing something, if I was inadvertently doing something that was damaging my son, my God, you better bet that I'd want to know about it so that I could figure out how to fix it. If I found out that my child went to a teacher and said, you know, that my mommy does this and it really hurts me or it really makes me feel bad, I'd call in an army to help me fix it now.
Right. Yeah. It's like, and that's religiously enforced deity designation of parents is I think super duper common, and it wasn't just my family. I saw it with a lot of other families. This idea of as though they were just ready for being ready. And this is also the church that is encouraging people to get pregnant at like 18, get married right away and just start popping out kids. And these are not people who are ready. And what's worse is their parents, who have all these shitty beliefs, are their model of good parenting. And I've seen that happen in my own life, where that has turned out to be an absolute disaster.
It's a clever recipe for dependency.
Yeah.
What that is. People don't have any independence that way, specifically women. If before they're the age that they can fully get a post-secondary education and enter the workforce, they're already popping out kids and they're entirely dependent.
On the local advice too, because it's not
dependency.
It's not like these institutions are recommending people go read secularly based, not even, and I don't mean secular in the regard of like books that say like don't go to church. I'm just talking about literally only speak about here are healthy ways to raise a child with no regard for religion, but not there to shit on it.
A couple child development books would be neat. Some of the Piaget books would be really, really great. Like Jean Piaget wrote some really, really great books. So did like Vygotsky. Like read some Vygotsky. Like those are really good books on developmental stages that I think everybody should read. I mean, I'd avoid Freud, but Piaget and Vygotsky are two really, if anybody's looking for some child development stuff.
But instead, they're getting basically like, okay, here's the religious advice. We've come up with 2 or 3 identities for your children to choose from. They'll have the freedom to pick one of these, but if they venture out of that, you make sure you do everything you can to make sure that kid falls back in line. And it's just incredible levels of trying to control information, personality, and identity. And it turns into, when you do stray out of that, punishment for exploring yourself. Now I'm literally just describing my childhood. Here's the next story. My mother forced me to stay in a group that bullied, demeaned, and put me down every chance they got. She insisted I forgave the boys who bullied me for close to 7 years, and others insisted I forgive my mom because family is family, and she's your mother. Bullshit. Family is whoever cares for and supports you. You can choose your family and blood relations. You can choose your family and blood... I see. You can choose your family, comma, and blood relations don't entitle anyone to mistreat you or to love you or forgiveness. Total agreement. Nobody's entitled to shit. And I learned too late in life that I get to decide who's my family. They don't get to decide for me.
Yeah. And something that's important to consider I'm really sorry, I keep panning myself. It's so hot. Something that's really important to consider when you're in these situations too, and I would ask people to just contemplate this when you're put in these situations. Once somebody is proposing that you need to forgive, I would wonder, or at least ask them, why do you feel that I need to forgive? Because in some situations, it may be because they wish to quell the situation, and a wish to quell the situation means that you kind of have to drop it, right? So it's a way of silencing you almost to tell you that you need to forgive somebody. You don't. You absolutely do not need to. Now, again, I'm going to press the fact that it's not detrimental to forgive people. Forgiving people is a wonderful thing to do. It can release a ton of stress and anxiety from you. It can be a way to walk forward. It can be incredibly valuable. It can be the best thing you do. But when somebody is pressing it upon you as an imperative, you need to really, really assess whether it's the best thing for you or whether it's the best thing for the person that's pressing it upon you.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's, yeah. The whole thing, as we were saying at the beginning, what we care about is the mandate. And there are a number of people in my life that I have moved on from them in my life, and it was actually cutting them out of my life. It wouldn't have made sense if I had forgiven them to cut them out of my life. It was actually important to my own progress to cut them out of my life. And by not forgiving them, I was able to finally come to that conclusion easier. So they're not somebody who weighs on me because I haven't forgiven them. I'm not obsessing over them. I don't hate them. Every now and then I'll get a text from one. There's actually a couple of them. I'll get a text from one of them, just ignore it. And I might have a moment of like, fuck you, not happening. Because I'm not, because the forgiveness is not there. But I'm going to keep them out of my life, and that pattern, I'm not going to repeat the bad patterns that put me in shitty situations. What we'll do now is move over to super chats. I know people put more stories and examples in the super chat, so we're not quite done with the topic itself, because there will definitely be more. If you have some on your end, you're welcome to read them out too.
Oh, I do. Did you want to go? I'm sure you have significantly more than me. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in total.
Okay. We can start with mine and then end out with yours if you want, or we can do it the other way. I don't care.
That's totally fine. You go right ahead if you're ready.
Cool.
It's fine.
Starting out with a thank you to RJ. Lucy first says, love you, friend. So honored and proud to be in your pumpkin posse, your family. To me, and words will never express how much that matters. And that's because we get to pick our family. That's just reinforcing that. Gabriel Durnham. Oh, yeah, we all do. Thank you, by the way, Lucy, and our other mods tonight. We have What the Craft here, and Darchie B, and Vandy, and I'm sure a few others. Vandy's more modded, so because Vandy's been around so long and supportive so long that they're not being subjected to slow mode.
Hi.
Hi, exactly.
Hi.
Every time. I mentioned that on a live show, I think last week, and moments later I received an email from Vandy that said, hi.
That's awesome.
Gabriel Durham, thank you. Liquid Cucumber, thank you. Goth Pink Cat Meow says, forgiving people for things they did, my childhood. And I think I also forced myself to as well. Now, as a kid, there are certain things that are a little different. Like you have to keep living with your siblings unless they get to a certain level of abusive. Then they get the authorities certainly involved. But siblings I cut out for the behavior as adults that they were actually exhibiting as in our childhood too. At that time, it probably was more useful for me to forgive and reconcile. But as an adult, if you're not going to grow out of that bullying bullshit, fuck you. Get out of my life. Thank you to Blue Rising. Gabriella Therese. Hi, Jimmy. I just wanted to say I love what you do. Well, I love what you do. Whatever it is. I love it. RJ, thank you. The ex-Hindu atheist, gaslight in short. Yeah, it is. Wouldn't you say? Tremendous gaslighting. The idea of taking your upset for something that was done bad to you and making you feel guilty as though you've committed some transgression. Yeah.
I completely agree with that.
Brooklyn says, thanks for all you do. I understand if you don't want to answer, but if so, what are your thoughts on Tracy Harris leaving the atheist experience? Have you watched her interview on why she left? I've watched some stuff. I'm sad to see Tracy leave. Personally, I think that the atheist community of Austin and the atheist experience and all of those things, I think they're all salvageable, and there would be a way for people to move forward harmoniously and happily, and we can have even better than what we had before. But I think that there are a number of people in the situation. I think people have split into groups, and that none of the groups do a good job at perceiving how the other groups feel. I'd say it's a lot of projection, and it's not a lot of. In fact, that was in listening to Tracy talk about it, I realized that I was even wrong about the way she perceives me, or not me specifically, but people I support. I was wrong about my perception of her perception. And I actually think that it's super duper useful for people to find out people's perceptions of perceptions, because then you start to be able to hone in on the productive conversations. I'm sad Tracy left. She was definitely one of my favorite hosts, and I'm sad that I don't see a reconciliation happening. I think it will be very much a new sort of show and a new sort of ACA going forward, and I don't see. I think the people that are gone probably aren't ever going to come back. That was like the most diplomatic answer, because I didn't get into any of the actual, like, the substance. But there's a lot there. Yeah, it's too much. Jasmine K, thank you. Alice Sweet, congratulations, Jimmy. Thank you. I don't remember what we were talking about at the time. Oh, I think it was for kicking drugs. Zombie Unicorn. Yeah, 7 years clean. Zombie Unicorn, is David S. Pumpkins your father? I hope so. Katie Bell, I needed to hear this today. I had to leave home because of my alcoholic mother. I felt obligated to forgive her. Thank you so much for this stream. This made me feel validated for leaving. We could almost do another where we're still talking about the same overall topic, but just time that people played but their family card. Because there's like the story from earlier. That's your mother. Okay. Why do I need to forgive her? Why do I inherently need to forgive mothers? Because they're your mother. Okay, so what? That's the same thing, though.
One of the reasons I did the video is because the trope is so strong and it has permeated so deeply that it's impacted therapeutic recovery strategies to an nth degree. Like, it's almost as though that some people, like specifically Christian counselors, but even some secular counselors, have this perception that forgiveness is synonymous with the release of angst and animosity. And you can release angst and animosity without putting pressure on a victim to forgive. Like, the two can be separated as concepts if the pressure to forgive is causing more angst and animosity. You need to be able to recognize that and delineate the two.
Right.
But anyway, so that's one of the reasons that I did the video to begin with and sent it to Jimmy, was because I was like, I feel like your viewers could. Andy's just super chatted me high. Thanks,
this is where we're talking. I think it is important too, because like you mentioned, it happens in secular therapy too. There are things that come from the religious world that make it out, where it's so adopted by so many people. The concept of purity is not only, it's not as though every atheist is like, yeah, women who have sex with lots of guys are totally cool. There's still that slut shaming happening even amongst atheists, even with atheism. So it's bad. Mackenzie Rinnes says, thank you. I didn't post my story yesterday, but when I saw you were doing this stream, I cried. Just the fact you are doing this is enough. It was also very draining. I was more in the headspace ready for this going into it because I read it earlier, but I was messaging Shannon like, I don't know, this is going to be really tough. I'm not sure that
this... my fault. I'm sorry. I should never have sent you them. I'm sorry, Jimmy.
No. If it's useful for other people, I'm glad we did it. Janelle Brumfield, my sister's 20-year-old boyfriend tried to sleep with me when I was 15. I'm lesbian, but she blamed me. Eventually, everyone forgave him and were pissed and incredulous that I wouldn't. This is another thing that happens with slut shaming that fucking drives me up the goddamn wall. Somebody will cheat on somebody, and even if it is unbeknownst to the person they had the affair with, that they had a relationship, the hatred will be designated toward them. And the worst part is it's happened along such sexist lines that we have successfully taught women to hate other women when things like that happen. When it's like, no, your dude's the fucking asshole in this situation. Treat him like get rid of him. I have a no cheating, not even once policy. If somebody cheats, it's over. I can be in a relationship with someone who's never going to do that if I just wait for somebody else. And so that's my policy.
The forgiveness by proxy thing, trumping the forgiveness, that annoys the shit out of me. Like, everybody else has forgiven him for what he did to you. Why can't you? Well, it's easy for them because he didn't do shit to them. So what's it to them? Like that's another case of, we're all over it. We want to move past it. So why can't you move past it just because it happened to you? Like, aren't you thinking about us?
Yep.
Like, that frustrates me. I'm really, really sorry. I'm so sorry. Everybody, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. She's sorry,
I'm sorry, bye.
LC says, Jimmy, what is your opinion about Ricky Gervais and his public discussions about his atheism? I'm happy anybody is talking about it, especially when they do so in positive ways. Unless you're talking about something recently happened that was like super toxic. Things I have seen in the past were very well executed. I think he is a pretty smart dude. I really liked his back and forth with Stephen Colbert and his it was this whole thing about religious books versus science books. If you got rid of all of them, 1,000 years would pass by. All the science books would be back, but none of the religious books would be. And that even shut up Colbert, who I love. I love Stephen Colbert, except when he gets all Christy.
That's your line. Christy. The Christy line.
So Christy. Nervardia, previously Godless Strain. I know this is off topic, but could you please shout out the Australian Pumpkin Posse for their hard work? Happy news for the end of such a heavy topic. Yes, the Australian Pumpkin Posse got Steven Anderson banned from Australia. That is a big fucking deal.
And not bad for an imaginary country.
Yeah, there was there's like lists of accomplishments of things. Now, this wasn't something I personally did, but it was parts of our audience who found out from all of the hard work that was done by everybody involved. I'm not going to list everybody like I've tried to do like 7 times, and then I feel bad for forgetting somebody. But a lot of people put a lot of work into that, and that got that out to more and more people. And part of our audience, I know that the individual who led that specific thing doesn't want to be credited at the moment because of certain concerns they have. But there was especially one individual who like took on the mantle and led that whole thing. And yeah, just amazing. Stephen Anderson, banned in Australia. Thank you, Pumpkin Posse. Adrian Grilly, there's more NIFB stuff to come. I know I feel like I keep promising it and pushing it off. I've been dealing with a lot of, I was gonna say family. It's not even true. I've been dealing with a lot of health shit, and the next steps that I want to take and the next things I want to do in regards to that take a lot of very deliberate work. In other words, I'm saying all the other episodes that you've seen since then, I've just shit out.
That's true.
They didn't take anywhere, but the NIFB stuff does. So there will be more to come. You know it's true too. Adrian Grilly says, once I pay off my car, orbital tier, here I come. That's very, very kind of you. The top tier on my Patreon is called the Orbital Cosmic Pumpkin Gods. It used to be called Orbital Teapots, but now I wanted pumpkins and everything. That's like the one nice thing that came out of the NIFB for me is all the pumpkin stuff. I keep receiving gifts like this, which I love.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Very cool.
Somebody sent me these paper ones too. Anyway.
That's awesome.
CMDR Dark Light. If the clergy that make victims apologize were sexually assaulted, I wonder if they would think they should apologize to their attacker. I think what you're getting at, it's not quite the way I would phrase things like that, but I think what you're getting at is that there is a total lack of empathy and zero attempt to put yourself in the shoes of another person and really think like, what if this was me? What if this was my child? What if this was, the way you saw Shannon when relaying stories about children be devastated because she has an 8-year-old and that's immediately who she thought of. These people don't do that, and they should. Empathy and sympathy are far better virtues than fucking forgiveness. Eli the Bean. I was made to feel if a person was raped, you were worthless and broken from that point on because it was your fault for not doing something or for doing something to tempt them. Yep, that's pretty consistent with the experiences of a lot of people that were raised in my church and churches like mine. Well, there's not a lot of other churches like mine, but churches with a similar level of Christian fundamentalism. Cam Z says, question, did you ever blame or judge your secret Catholic girlfriend for her participation in your shared sexual experiences? Love your channel. No. Oddly enough, I didn't. I never considered her like, okay, so I've talked about this. Go ahead, everybody pour your shot. Jimmy's going to talk about his libido.
I think you actually owe me money.
Yeah, whatever it is. It was way worse as a teenager. And she was always, not always, but she was often down when I was. But I don't think, if it was up to her to initiate, I don't think it would have happened as often. So if I ever expressed the interest in doing it, it was easy. It was easy to get enthusiasm for it, but I don't know. Maybe I just never gave her the opportunity. Maybe I was just always horny, so I don't know what would have happened if I didn't mention it every 20 minutes. But I can honestly say that wasn't something I did, and in a way, it's like that means I didn't internalize a terrible idea of like, oh, I should blame this temptress. I never even was mad about like, cause, oh, like she's keen on it because she's a different religion, because I knew how keen I was on it. But in reality, I think I just never could get past my own shame of myself to bother blaming somebody else for it, because I was very aware. I was doing as much by myself to myself as I was doing with a partner. So,
I believe you.
Libido.
Libido.
I don't know if they have to take a shot when you say it. You
Yeah,
all
they
can
do
decide.
now. They do now. That's a new rule.
Yeah. Tiffany, thank you to everyone for sharing. This helps more people than you know. Have a great night, Jimmy and Shannon. Thank you, Tiffany.
Oh, thanks, Tiffany.
Annalise Koskiniemi? Oh, I know I messed it up. I was raped in a domestically violent relationship. That was my first time. I stayed for 5 years. During a brief attempt to return to church, an old friend made me feel deeply ashamed for my loss of purity. Unfortunately, too, there are people who don't understand that. And it's even funnier when not funnier. It's even more ironic. It's certainly what I meant, not funny. It's more ironic when it's like the toxically masculine people that are just out there like, why didn't you just leave? I would have blah, 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 because they are used to living in a world where if they just say, I'm going to fuck shit up and take whatever I want, society doesn't punish them for that. It is not the same experience. That is not the same experience for people, for everybody across the board. And there are a number of people who stay in those things because of other states the abuse puts them in, and also past abuse and things of that nature. And so it's, I'm not a fan either of the people that are like, well, why didn't you get out of it yourself? And this, you didn't actually mention that. I was projecting or seeing the future, because some asshole will say that in a comment. Like, why would you have been in that relationship for 5 years? Any comment?
I'm becoming emotionally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I hate the gravity of how prevalent these things are. It hits me from time to time, and it's upsetting to me that not only it so frequently happens, but that the people it happens to are so mistreated after the fact. And the empathy that people expect them and mandate them to demonstrate for the person that perpetrated a crime against them isn't extended to them themselves. Like, you're asking something of a victim that you're not willing to even grant the victim that you're conversing with, that you think needs to have it elicited from them. It floors me that people. I'm a naturally empathetic person, though, so I think that I feel gravity to things, and I like to make sure that people are okay. So it doesn't, I recognize the fact that not everybody is like me, and for other people, they literally, as empathetic as they attempt to be and want to be and desire to be, it just may not be natural for them. But just to think, this is a message not to people that are victims, but if you are somebody who's dealing with somebody who's had these sorts of trauma, even if you feel like you can't help the person, or that you're not going to be able to give them a message of empathy, just say, I recognize and understand that this is something that's important to you. I'm not sure that I'm going to be the person that you're going to be able to confide in about this. Perhaps I can help you find some resources, or perhaps, there's somebody else that you can have these conversations with. I sincerely apologize that I'm not going to be able to be that sounding board for you. Like, anything is better than saying, get over it.
Right.
To something. Really, like anything.
Something I find so frustrating about it too is that, again, drawing from life experiences, when you are the victim of something that's more severe, you already are in a state of, so often victims are going to blame themselves in the first place, and they shouldn't, and they do so wrongfully, but it's unfortunately a common response to trauma and to these terrible things happening. And so when a person is going through that and having a rough time and blaming themselves, any individual who's going to then reinforce that, any individual who's going to say like, oh yeah, I get why you're blaming yourself. Here's a few things you maybe didn't consider and should blame yourself more for. Let me just give another resounding, fuck you. That's the kind of shit that also gets under my...
I'm so sorry. The time lag. I didn't mean to talk over you.
You're good.
I was just going to say that we're all essentially sort of conditioned to believe the detrimental things more readily than the positive things.
Right.
We're taught to be essentially, humble, which is great. There's great things about being humble and not being a big conceited asshole all the time. Yeah. But part of what we're
that
taught,
felt directed at me. I'm just kidding.
Well, it was.
Okay, yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
I'm glad you picked up on it. I'm proud of you, actually. It's good. We're making progress.
Oh, no. Now I'm just putting up a wall.
I'll deal with you later.
Okay.
But yeah, so and part of that's conceptualized too with the we're all born broken sort of thing, right? We're all damaged and need to be fixed, and something about us is inherently at fault or flawed in any and all situations, and that translates and it extrapolates. When you're in a really severely traumatic situation, it extrapolates at an exponential level, and it needs to be mitigated, but instead it's reinforced by external factors and people that you interact with, and sometimes, unfortunately, therapeutic help that you seek out for yourself to get better starts to reinforce that cycle of self-blame and self-assessment and detrimental self-perception. So I'm passionate about mental health, and this stuff all pisses me off.
And she's also passionate about how conceited I am. The Think Jinx says, Jimmy, you're doing the Lord's work, in quotations, by helping this former Christian heal, and I can't be the only one. Thank you. Thanks for all that you do. I'm glad people got something out of this, because if they didn't, this was too exhausting to do if no one got any help out of it. So I'm glad to hear people did. It would not have been worth it otherwise. It's emotionally and intellectually, is exhausting the wrong word? I feel like I've been hit by an emotional bus. I've managed not to cry, which I'm actually pretty surprised by. Brittany Morgan, I'm too sober for this. Next time, screwdrivers. Also too sober for this, but I don't drink, so nothing I can do.
I'm too sober for this, and I do drink.
Vandy says, all pump the Hail King. I get what you did there. That's beautiful. Sir Clara Anna the Great, just take my money. You're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you. But don't take my money. I need it. Rachel D says, off topic, but have you tried CBD oil for anxiety? I'm on 4 anxiety medications and slowly coming off them because CBD oil worked like magic on me. I haven't. I've mostly been doing cognitive behavioral therapy and trying to work things out as much as I can. Basically, when the zombie apocalypse happens, there's not going to be any more CBD oil, and I'm going to need to manage my panic attacks. So I'm trying to do my best I can without any intervention, chemical intervention. Gabriel Durham, it's Gabriel, as in hit that like button. Woo! Everybody, hit it. And the subscribe button. Make sure you even are subscribed, because that keeps happening. People don't realize YouTube unsubscribe them. Gianni Rubio, thank you. John Retrammel says, don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Atheist's new channel, Jimmy Snow, What Do You Know? Thank you for reminding me to shill myself. Oh. That channel is hard launching on August 1st. It is going to be Monday through Friday, multiple posts a day. We're going to be talking about whatever is on my mind. There will definitely be a lot of political stories, but I am also planning on I think I'm going to do an episode about what underwear I wear. And they haven't even offered to sponsor me, which frankly is, I haven't actually tried. But there's going to be everything over there. But especially as the number one reason I'm doing the new channel is we are closing in on an election, and I think as much commentary as possible and as many voices out there to encourage people to vote. And how to vote correctly. No, I'm kidding. I'm not. That those are useful things. Spionky says, thank you for giving 9-year-old me permission to cry and be angry. Been holding that in for decades. I thought you were saying that you were 9 now, but been holding that in for decades implies you were not. So whatever happened to you at 9, I'm very sorry. And I'm really glad that you were able to find...
Was that the person with the story that about when they were 9 and they went to the priest about the abuse? Or because if it is...
No, different person. Here. Different person. Let's see. Stargazing Duckling, thank you for covering this topic. Grew up hearing this forgiveness narrative and have recently been learning about all the dangerous problems with it, and there are many. Gabriel Durham, and a really good video that covers those problems is over on Shannon Q's channel, and you can find a link to that below. Gabriel Durham, thank you for talking about this. I was abused by my birth father for 15 years. It's nice to be heard by at least one person that it's not my fault. And not only is it not your fault, that person might be the person, they might be the sperm donor that led to your existence, but their involvement in your life is entirely your choice. Not, that sounded like blaming yourself. You can choose to not have them in your life is what I'm saying. Not that you did choose to keep them in your life when they were abusive. If you want to cut that person out, you should. Eli the Bean, on the no cheating, not even once, I was raped and my ex said my rapist got a pass and that I had cheated, his words. Fuck your ex. I'm glad that your ex is your ex. I hope that's the reason why they're your ex, frankly, because what a garbage person they are. Hey, it's Jess says, hope you're both having a great day. I think it's really important to have this conversation, so I'm glad you guys covered this. I am also glad, and I'm also glad that I don't have a stream tomorrow because I'm gonna be in recovery. Cartoon Contrarian, I know a lot of victims blame themselves. I feel like only forgiveness needed is for themselves so they can move past that guilt. Right, and I think we've both said this. There are times where, and there are certainly situations where forgiveness is appropriate if you want to issue it, and it can be a good part. But the idea of forcing it through you, especially as you're dealing with stuff, is bullshit. Thank you, NK, which I assume means North Korea. I guess Kim Jong-un is a fan. Becca M, I am a child of God, and he has sent me here, has given me an earthly home with parents who are either absent or abusive, and I'm required to respect them anyway. Sorry to be a bummer. I love you, X. She's referring to a song that we had to sing growing up as Mormons. It goes, I am a child of God, and he has sent me here, has given me an earthly home with parents kind and dear, which for some of us was kind of fucked up. What's the rest? Lead me, guide me, walk beside me, help me find the way. Has anyone else noticed that whenever I'm trying to sing old Mormon stuff, I'll try to sing. I'll try to sing a little bit okay when I'm singing not that stuff, but I try to sound like the 75-year-old women that sat around me in church when I'm, teach me all that I must do to live with him someday.
There's always a lady that stood next to me in church that she sang like she meant it, but I wish she hadn't meant it.
Yeah. Stop meaning it so much. Yeah, I got you. I have an Shalev Sia says, I have had an abusive person tell me I need to accept their apology because they've forgiven me for things, but she can never give examples of them.
Doesn't matter anyway. It's
right,
not
even
a
if she could. Right. Yeah. It's not a trade situation. If you forgave me for finishing off a bag of chips that I shouldn't have, that's not quite the same of decades of being warned. I don't care even if they had a list.
Even if the situations were goddamn identical.
Yeah.
Even if I punch Jimmy in the face and then Jimmy punches me in the face and both of them are unprovoked for whatever reason, but I don't think that's possible because one of us would have had to punch first. Anyway, let's say they're both unprovoked. I punch him, he punches me. If I choose to forgive him, that doesn't mean that he has to forgive me. That's his individual choice. That's not up to me. It's not up to anybody else. It doesn't matter what the situation is. Somebody forgiving you, you can't weaponize forgiveness to elicit. Right. Oh my God! No. Sorry. If they really forgave you, it shouldn't even matter to them whether or not you forgive that. It's their personal choice. Forgiveness is about the individual, not about the person that they're forgiving. Or it's not about it.
The context of this next one doesn't make sense. I almost think somebody's trying to get me to say like fuck you to like one of their friends or something. So I'm going to skip that part and just go with the Mike Mick says, love you, Shannon and Land Daddy. And then says in a separate one that you, Shannon, are gorgeous and that they love you. And apologies to Paul. Sorry, Paul.
He'll forgive you. I'll mandate it. Tell him he has to.
Gabriel, maybe it's Gabriella Durham. Okay, short A. So Gabrielle Durham. Short A, Jimmy Do, as in apple again. Well, that's hard for me. Apple to me is apple. Again is again. So you said A as in apple and again. I think you must be British, so you think it's apple, perhaps, and again. But so a short A, Durham. I think I've got it right. Again, love your channel. Well, thank you very, very much. And it looks like there. Okay, so it looks like an apology came in too. So, Becca, sorry I didn't read it right. Fuck me, sorry. So this must be something that's happening down in the live chat, or something. And then here's the most recent one I have, and then we'll do yours. And if more come in, we'll finish mine out. Dylan Fuller, what about moving on in general? My aunt keeps telling me to move on because I'm not with my abusers anymore, but I'm pretty sure it's because of my PTSD. Your aunt can't control the level to which, or the speed at which you recover. You need to recover in a way that is healthy for you. I hope that means at some point you're able to move on without forgiving your abusers if you don't want to do that, but that you're able to live a life that doesn't have any regard for that past experience. I hope that happens for you. But if it doesn't, you're not wrong for it not happening fast enough. Your aunt can go fuck herself.
Well, she doesn't necessarily need to go fuck herself. Sometimes that can come from a place that's a positive place, right? Like, so if you and I, Jimmy, if all of a sudden you just shut yourself inside and didn't talk to anybody and didn't want to do your channel anymore and stop doing the things that you love.
So like almost happens 9 times a week. Like
yeah. 60, like 30% of now.
Yeah.
If that happened, I would be concerned for you and I would want you to be better. I've been trained in better strategies for communicating my empathy in those situations and my desires for you. Somebody who hasn't may feel those empathetic feelings and feel as though I want what's best for this person. I want to see this person that I care about, go about their life and live and be happy. And to them, the best that they could do to articulate that is to say, I really wish you would move on, because that is their genuine wish for you. And they don't know how to help you. They don't have the tools in their belt to help you along that journey and to understand that what you need isn't for somebody to tell you to be better. What you need is for somebody to provide you some sort of guidance or give you the tools that are required, or listen or be more empathetic. So it may be coming from a good place, but it's the wrong approach. So I'm hesitant to tell that person's specific aunt to go fuck themselves.
I mean, I'd probably tell you to go fuck yourself, but in that
situation,
you would,
but I wouldn't listen to you.
But, to me, and I could be reading it wrong, but to me it seems like Dylan is expressing that their aunt I'm just going to use the word twice, is expressing impatience with their moving on. And so that's why I was making it about, you will do it at your pace. I hope that you can figure that out. I hope you can find ways to do it that will even speed up that pace because you're doing so healthily. But if somebody is trying to push you to moving on because you're not moving on fast enough for their taste, then if that is the case,
then they can go fuck themselves. Yeah.
Your aunt can go fuck herself.
Then your aunt can go fuck herself.
Yeah. Eli the Bean says, here's this for being helpful to so many people. Thank you, Eli. Eli's so friggin' supportive. They're also an orbital cosmic pumpkin god. Do you want to read yours? And I'll see if I have any more come in the meantime.
Sure. I have a few. I have one from a name that I can't conceivably read because it's in a language that I don't understand. But
we're going to call you Paula.
Paula? Why? Why are you going to call me Paula?
No, the person whose name you can't read.
Oh, okay, Paula. Paula sent hearts and some sort of graphic that I don't understand. And Sid sent, what do you think of offenders who have been genuinely forgiven by their victims but are still unable to forgive themselves? I think that they should do some sort of rehabilitative therapy. I don't think that if somebody has gone through some sort of retributive justice, or has, paid penance, and a victim has forgiven them and has made the steps to reconcile, and the person has paid their penance, I think it is important for people to have a road to absolution. I don't think that anybody should be just completely and totally whole cloth written off because they were a bad person, because people can inarguably change. They can absolutely change. They can change. But I don't think that they should ever forget what they did to somebody else. And I think to a certain degree they should carry some of that with them, if for no other reason than so that they don't fully absolve themselves and can inform their future behaviors towards people. And I think that they should go through some sort of serious empathy training to understand the impact of their actions towards others, so that as they do go forward, they don't cause future harm to people. Because here's the reason for that. Everybody who harms somebody, you can't just take somebody who harmed somebody and remove them from society forever or kill them.
Right.
That's not how it works. You need to have a path to allow that person to become better and reincorporate. And you can't do that realistically if they spend their entire life being beaten down after they've paid their penance. If their entire life is just them constantly paying the price over and 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 over again until the day they die, they'll never contribute anything to society, and they'll continue to transgress. So I think that there should be a path for them to become better people.
I want to ask you basically a question along those lines in regards to my own situation, because I think I have similarly, with parts of my past, moved on without forgiving myself for things, because in a way, I almost can't understand the person I used to be, because we feel like so distinctly different characters that it's more like a memory of someone I used to know than a past self. Because of that, it's almost like, to me, that person did those things and I find them unforgivable. And I almost wouldn't want to try to work to forgive those things, because if I feel like by holding them up in that place where I've moved on but haven't forgiven them, it kind of puts on almost a mental barrier that prevents me from slipping back into old patterns and old habits and into becoming that person again. And so for me, in the same way we've said, you can move on from somebody without having to forgive them, I wonder what you think of the idea of, I can also move on from something that I might have done in my past that I personally find unforgivable. And some of them are really little silly things, those things that make you feel bad all over again when you remember them. One time I implied that a teacher of mine was a Nazi, only to find out that their parents or grandparents, one of them had died in the Holocaust, and felt terrible about it. And every time that memory comes back up, you get that guilt feeling back in your, and so that's one that I guess I haven't forgiven myself on, but that's certainly on the less serious end of things, of things from the past. So what do you think of that idea of moving on without forgiving yourself, in the same way we talk about moving on from when somebody else transgresses against you, but you don't forgive them?
Okay, so I think that it's perfectly okay, but it all depends, I guess, on your conceptualization of forgiveness, which is an important component to this. So if you see forgiveness as excusing behavior or absolution of behavior, or validating a behavior, then it wouldn't be healthy to forgive yourself if by forgiving yourself you're finding rationalizations for why your behavior was acceptable, if that's the way that you see it. But if forgiveness to you means, and this goes for victims too, this is why it's a very individual process, and it has to do with the needs of the person and how they want to progress. But if you see forgiveness, for example, as allowing yourself to let that component of you go without continuing to punish yourself for the transgressions that you've moved past, that you feel as though you've recognized and have worked to overcome, then it would be beneficial, because allowing yourself to move past that and become a better person isn't the same as forgetting why you're at this point to begin with, or excusing what you had done previously. Does that make some sense?
Right. Yeah. It's not like looking back. And I hope I wasn't trying to give off the impression that I'm saying, like, I haven't been able to convince myself that telling a Holocaust surviving child, or a child of a Holocaust survivor, that they're a Nazi, like, I forgave myself, so now I think it's okay, and I actually see why the joke was kind of funny. Like, none of that. It's literally just the, like, that person who did that, who is technically me, that was fucked up. Shouldn't do that again. And again, I'm using an example of something that's minor compared to other things in my...
Sometimes forgiveness can just be a recognition that a transgression that took place is recognized and understood as a transgression. So my conceptualization of forgiveness, for example, is if somebody does something to me and is remorseless in regard to that transgression, I'm not going to grant them forgiveness, because they're not recognizing the damage that was done. They're not demonstrating empathy. They're not showing me that they have any recognition for the effect that their actions have upon me. Now, if somebody demonstrates to me that they have a regard for how their behaving affects me and other people, and they're willing to incorporate that regard going forward, I'm willing to forgive them so that they can progress and be better people. That, like, I'm willing to grant that to them in most instances, because I'm an empathetic person and it's important to me that other people be able to progress. That's just a component of who I am. But that doesn't mean that it's necessary, but it also doesn't mean that it's wrong. So withholding forgiveness from yourself could be a form of self-punishment that holds you in a cycle. And if it's holding you in a cycle that's preventing you from progressing, because you continuously feel the need to punish yourself for things that happen in your past that you can't change, then in those instances, I would think incorporating the idea of forgiveness, not as a mandate, but just as something that's worth consideration, might be beneficial. And once you figure out what your conceptualization of forgiveness is, and like I said, again, it's a very individual process. That makes some cool.
Yeah.
Right.
I got you.
Thank you. That was a good conversation. I appreciate that. I think that may have been valuable to some people too. So Fred Harvey said, forgiveness is mandated to protect the abuser, who is often a member of the church or congregation, and the faith must be protected from bad publicity. I think that can be the case sometimes. It speaks towards what Jimmy was mentioning earlier with his family, where it's a matter of protecting the group at a detriment to the individual. Do you have anything to contribute to that one, Jimmy?
We don't go to the police.
Yeah, precisely. Oh, Narvardia, previously godless Strahan, who's Narvardia. I'm trying desperately to pronounce that. Who I adore. It is one of the pumpkin posse in Australia. Shannon, here's some moolah for being awesome. I wish I could send you photos of puppies and kittens right now. Oh, bless her. She's so sweet. Azula Spencer, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name, Azula. Hey, Shannon, thanks for all you do. Keep being awesome. Thank you, Azula. I very much appreciate you. Vandy said, hi.
Shock. I'm shocked. I'm shocked and I'm astonished.
Right? What? Complete, this is brand new information. And then Jenny Love said, I thought I'd never be able to forgive my dad, but it turns out the woman he was seeing at the time was trying to turn him against me. We're okay now. Well, I'm very, very glad that you came to that place, Jenny Love. I appreciate that was what was beneficial for you, and that you were able to do that and move forward, and that you have a good relationship now. So Jimmy, did you have more that you have to go? That's it for me. That's all of my super chats.
I think I got a couple more that came in.
Thank you, everyone, for supporting the channel. I appreciate you.
Modest Bat, thank you. Mike Mick, have you seen the Hail Satan documentary, Loves? I have not. Have you?
Oh, I have not. I didn't know that there was a thing called a Hail Satan documentary. Let's check it out.
I'm going to the doctor tomorrow this is from Jackie's Place. I'm going to the doctor tomorrow to check for MS or frontal lobe damage. It's not extreme yet, but it's still scary. Watching your vids has helped me get through the days dealing with this. Thanks. I'm really glad you find some peace and stuff here. I'll let you speak to because you can speak from experience to the MS.
Yeah, I have progressing remitting multiple sclerosis. It's almost secondary progressive. Don't be scared. It's different for everybody. To give you a little bit of my story, which may help, I was diagnosed with something called transverse myelitis when I was, in my 20s, my mid to late 20s, which is lesions on the spinal cord and the myelin around the spinal cord, and that progressed to lesions in my brain when I was in my early 30s, and I've been diagnosed with MS for almost, I think, 5 years now. I think I was 33 when I was diagnosed. But I've been mitigating it through, exercise, diet, and I have not yet started a course of medication. And there are days when it's not great, but thus far for me, it's something that is manageable. That's not to discourage you from going on medications. Please, if you feel like that's the course that you need to take, do it. And talk to your doctor. It just wasn't the course that I felt was initially best for me. I wanted more follow-up MRIs. But yeah, so don't be scared. You can live a very long and productive life with multiple sclerosis. But I'm not going to lie, there are going to be some things suck. Some things suck a lot.
Also, somebody on your friends list is almost definitely an asshole, and if it does turn out to be that, they're going to try and sell you essential oils. Punch them in the face. Absolutely.
You will get so many videos with the cure for MS.
Yeah.
So many.
It's amazing. Apparently just lavender. A little bit of lavender and you're just cured.
Oh, yeah. Somebody in England found the cure for MS. That video gets sent to me monthly. And
it's some kind of like fish brain, right?
I don't even remember. I've never actually watched the video. It's the same video and over and over and over.
Gotcha. All right. First of all, there are people who are very surprised because you just basically aged yourself. They're very surprised at your age. They all said that...
I'm 37.
At least one person said that you look my age, which I don't know if that's a compliment to you or an insult to me. I don't know which way that one's going. I got a couple more last moment ones. Mike Mick says, diff in identifying has TST Satanist versus Atheist. I don't know what that meant, but you can email me if you were abbreviating a lot and tell me. DearMrAtheist@gmail.com. The Philosophy Guy, I've been following your journey. Just want to say thanks for motivating me to begin my own. Very, very cool. I'm about to start a new journey that is extremely intimidating. And so make sure everybody is subscribed to Jimmy Snow. What do you know? 20,000 subscribers before the hard launch. There were a few like videos here and there, and I think I only have one listed right now. That experience I had with them sending a child from the Jehovah's Witnesses to my door, but that's it. Anyway, this has been I was going to say tremendous fun. However, a lot of it was not fun, but not because of it was productive and not fun.
Hopefully valuable.
It was a lot like digging a ditch during the summer. Terrible, miserable work, but it hopefully does a lot of good. Yeah.
Hopefully somebody found this beneficial.
Absolutely.
I really, really hope that. And
Shannon,
take care of yourself.
Why don't you remind people where to find you, and then we will take it. We will head on out of here.
I have a channel called Shannon Q, and I'm assuming there's a video link in the description, so you can click on that, or you can just search Shannon Q. I'll come up. I look like this. It's my face. I'm a little more duck-lipped in the picture. And I talk about the intersection of psychology and faith and engage in complex conversations about topics with people who are generally diametrically opposed to my position, or I talk about concepts and topics that people generally avoid having conversations about because they're difficult to contend with, but some of them are important and valuable. So like this one. So I try to run at those conversations to see if there's any way that I can help and contribute.
Very cool.
So, yeah, that's who I am.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for coming on and chatting and hanging out. Thank you to everybody who watched. It is well past all of your bedtimes, so it is time to go to bed as soon as I get this thing ready to go. Okay, there it is. It is time for bed. Everyone, sleep well. Oh, I got two really last moment ones. Mike Mick, this is really better for the show Kai do with Kyle, but he wrote beta. LOL amazing, because that's the thing that Kyle and I like to yell at each other like we're incels. Eli the Bean says, it's not drama, it's trauma. That was something I said yesterday in my patron video call. We were talking about things in the way that sometimes things that are rough and going on. I think we were actually talking about this video we were going to do, the way people will treat trauma like it's drama. And so I yelled, it's not drama, it's trauma. And now people want that on a shirt.
I got two more really last minute ones too. Is it okay if I read them before I go?
Let me get this. I got one more real quick and then go for it. How do you feel about forgiving someone who doesn't remember the events? I think she brings up things in the past and don't remember current things she does. Nobody is entitled for any reason to your forgiveness, because your forgiveness is a step in if you decide to issue it, is a step in your journey and what you're going to do. And the fact of the matter is whether they remember it or not, their transgression still came from them. They are the kind of person who does that kind of thing. So whether or not you forgive them should be a part of your own decision making. Basically, anytime you're asking, what do you think about forgiving somebody who insists that you must for reason X, I reject the concept of an insistence of forgiveness.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think forgiveness is a self-directed process, and it's completely and entirely up to the person whose decision it is whether or not to forgive. And it should never be an imperative imposed by anybody else or mandated, because it's not up to them, didn't happen to them, it's not their decision. And they should not have any investment in the decision that you make in that regard. Yep. Aside from supporting you if they care about you in whatever decision you ultimately make. And helping you along your journey, whatever that might look like for you, because it's yours, not theirs. So Kaylin Van Canant, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. If I email you my story, Shannon, will you read it? Oh yeah, absolutely. I read all my emails. I've been a little awful with responding to some of my emails lately because I've been so busy, but I'm hoping to get back on it starting like next week. I can go through some of them. So yeah. I'll be away for some of this weekend, but please, do send it to me. I'll definitely read it. And the thorn in my side said, withholding forgiveness can also be a form of holding power over someone who you could forgive in time. Withholding forgiveness, I suppose, if your forgiveness is something that that person wants or desires, and the reason that you're withholding it is solely to manipulate them because you're withholding something that they desire, then that's something you should investigate about yourself, because that's unhealthy pathology. That's really unhealthy manipulative pathology, because at that point it's not about whether or not you actually want to forgive the person and find some sort of reconciliation or a form of release that allows you to move on. At that point, it's about what type of social power you can exercise because of the situation. And if you are a victim of a crime, if you are a victim of a traumatic crime, and your primary concern is wielding social power in order to harm the person who has harmed you, then I think that forgiveness shouldn't be something that you're in the realm of considering at that moment, because you have other things that need to be dealt with from a mental health perspective. Because your coping mechanism for trauma could be some form of retribution that you're enacting, as opposed to dealing with the trauma itself. You may be attempting to enact punishment or elicit pain from another human in order to get back at them and feel as though now you're in power, and those aren't healthy pathologies, and that's actually how abuse perpetuates.
Right. So that's not even withholding forgiveness. It's withholding a declaration of forgiveness. The thing I would worry about is it's not up to you to tell somebody that that's what they're doing either. If that is what they're doing, unfortunately, they have to identify that. And I think there are definitely people who are out there who are going to, who would use a statement like that if just universally agreed with. Like, sure, that can exist. It's not your place to go, unless you somehow have a professionally backed reason, and in which case it still wouldn't be it wouldn't be your opinion on it that matters. It would be the opinion of, say, a therapist or something. If it's not your place to tell somebody that they are weaponizing the withholding of forgiveness, because it may be the case that they just cannot forgive you for it.
I would never ever endorse you making that accusation against anybody, period, full stop, because you have absolutely no idea what's going on in their head. I was speaking more so from, in this scenario, that it was that the person knew that this is what they were doing, or was engaging this sort of behavior on purpose. What you should do from an introspective perspective, even if you are a mental health professional, you still can't read somebody's mind until somebody is forthright with what their motivations are, or a little more implicit if they can't be explicit with what their motivations are, that you can prod that out of them so that they can self-analyze, which is the point of the therapeutic process. You shouldn't levy those accusations, because A, they may be false, and B, in my experience, just levying accusations against people isn't the best way to get them to be introspective and contemplate things. Usually going to shut them the hell down. They'll go on the defensive, and that behavior will just entrench itself because they'll dig in their heels in a lot of instances.
Shannon, does your shirt have green leaves on the sleeves?
Oh my God, it does. Is it going purple?
Yeah, I just realized it's just going right through. Talking Ape says, wise men say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza. Can't think of a better sentiment to end on. Go to bed, everybody. It's past your bedtime. Good night.
That's fine.
Hey, come as you are unapologetically.
Whoa, Shannon's twerking.
Stop
it. Now Jimmy's twerking.
That's true.
But if you take a look at
factual information,
it's wider than you could imagine. Witness through passion. If you want to last in this massive universe, gotta take action. It's you the worst. Handouts do not stand out, and it might pan out, but you still won't have a pop the piston. You want to know what confidence is? Dominance when you think about who you really are. Embrace it and take it with open arms. That's how you get there, how you win. So allow it in. What you got to lose? Just be yourself, my guy. Come as you are unapologetically. Energy wasted on hatred, but I'ma let it be. No matter what you got to offer, your company won't be a bother. I'm Jimmy Snow, Mr. Atheist wasn't my father.